Hey, Storytelling Ron here, and this is a video about advice on. Okay, so there's a couple of the Dungeon Dudes, which I love, and the way they break down character classes, and also like D&D Optimized, which has been pretty interesting, coming up and appealing to players and figuring out the best, type of character and number crunching and all that. I totally get it. When I was playing Warhammer 40K, I used to do that all the time with the units and getting like the most, getting the strongest stuff to do the most damage to armor piercing and all that stuff. And I do think that stuff's very important and very popular and totally, a lot of views. And I'm just doing like DM stuff, little DM stuff, and that's just the way it is. And that's what I focus on mostly. But I want to talk about that for characters, making characters, players making characters. I want to this, and this is obviously for DMs to talk to players about, or to make sure you do this in session 0, or be aware of this. Don't let characters or players obsess over numbers like that. And it's important to kind of know numbers like that. It's important, especially for playtesting, especially for making sure that there is a band or range, where people do get to do some damage, and the numbers kind of equate to being effective in the game. But obsessing over that, or really focusing on that and forgetting about really what's most important, having fun is obviously the most important thing. But the way to really have fun is through storytelling and players having a story more than having the best killer, or destroyer. It's about having an interesting, funny, humorous character than it is about killing, being the most effective in battle. The most effective in battle it's not gonna be that fun. It's about having characters that are goofy and weak, and you have to figure out ways to win and avoid like grindy, successful combat every time. So I'm just trying to get across the point that stuff is important and fun, and definitely, go for it. But the more important thing is having a character that's interesting, that you want to delve into. Like for instance, I guess I'll use the most immediate example. My daughter is going to be playing a character coming up, and she wants to do poisoner's kit and poison and she was trying to decide between starting off with an alchemy kit or herbalism kit. And so we're talking about it, and it's not about the numbers or what's going to be most effective. It's about where you are in the story, what it is that you're going to do. And as a dungeon master, you need to promise your players that if they choose weird, interesting stuff that's different, you will help them nourish that trait, feat, or personality or characteristic. So she wants to really get into poisons and trying those out. And I'm going to give her quirky, interesting, and lots of, it's literally, I'm going to make it so that she's going to have literally a spell list, like spells of poisons that she can make and, and do things with. But they're going to be different and interesting and odd. They're not going to be like the most damage every round. I want players to come up with interesting ways to win a battle without having to just do hit points. So think about that when players are trying to make characters and they start obsessing over numbers. Reassure them that the numbers are not going to be as important. You really tell them, look, I promise you, I will give you world development stuff that will make your character more interesting, and let them know that. Really emphasize that winning is, if you're going to always want to win, it's not going to be a fun game. It is about running away. It is about interesting little things that they got to figure out, or weaknesses. Weaknesses, rolling when characters roll ones, that's just as fun and hilarious and as nat 20s all the time, right? You want to have some nat ones in there, and you want to have some craziness and fear and all that. And I really want to emphasize too, making sure that players don't always have these high stats all the time. I get 1 or 2 but have one or two low stats too that really make them that much weaker in that sense, and then they have to figure out another way of doing things. So so again, be careful with the number crunching and the optimizing of characters, because it'll make you more think about that than about a story, because a story means you have strengths and you have weaknesses, and you have to overcome those weaknesses in a unique way without being like the best at something. So again, I just as a DM to DM, because I'm kind of more of a DM channel, that please be aware of that when you start out a session, when you talk to the players, let them know that you will that if they play their characters in a story-driven, depth, interesting way, you will help them nurture that. And they don't always have to have the number crunching to win any whatever whatever they're going to go up against, and you're going to provide them with an environment that like one time this guy had a soldier background and he had a blacksmith kit, so I made it so that he could sharpen his own blades and get a little +1, like a little temporary +1 to his weapons, but he had to go and get like a couple more tools as he played along, and he developed his little blacksmithing, and that blacksmithing helped him out with his armor and his tools. So he literally had like temporary awesome armor, because he really finessed fixing him properly, normal armor, not magical. This is when he's at low level, so they literally were +1 weapons and +1 armor, for a few hits, kind of a thing, because they were so perfectly that they worked. And then he would repair them again, and have that, at that level. And then at some point he's going to progress beyond that and then just start buying stuff. But at the beginning he could do that, and it was fun, and he could do it for others and get paid a little bit. So you develop those kind of like interesting things, especially with those kits and stuff. I'm going to really delve into that as well, more kit stuff and interest, and whatever else, non-magical or non-spells, and more crafting kind of stuff like that is a way to make them more interesting, more part of the story. So hope that all made sense. So again, be careful that players don't get too obsessed over numbers and getting the right thing. And just another small note, I'm personally, I don't like multi-classing. I don't like it because people choose it to get that number crunch thing going, and I prefer that they take a stereotype or a trope and really delve into that, as opposed to getting like this so that it makes them better, and this so that it makes them immune, and then they're not really. I feel like that kind of spreads out the character, as opposed to making them really interesting and focused on the way that they are, what their strength is, and then having to deal with their weaknesses through their strengths, as opposed to just covering that weakness with another, class or whatever. So I personally don't allow multi-classing, at least not for now. Maybe some crazy fantasy, high fantasy craziness, I'll say, all right, multi-class away, do whatever you want. But for now, I really enjoy and want to explore, and I want to see the players explore these little tropes. I love tropes. That's how my mind works, and that's how I think the greatest stories and fantasy work and literature is having a trope, and then there's going to be little twists and stuff, but having that stereotype or trope, and then really fleshing out that way with strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so that's my advice on the character number crunching type of thing, and I still think it's a fun thing, and I'm not trying to denigrate it in any way. I'm just trying to make sure we all know it's really about story. It's about interesting characters. All right, so that's my advice on that. Very interesting videos, though. And I do remember doing it in Warhammer 40K, loving it too. So I definitely get it, but I just want to remind you. Okay, that's it. Hope that was interesting, helpful.